Hello, Audrey and John. Welcome. Hello, Rob. Welcome. As usual, we are giving it first 5 minutes or so. So for people to come in before we get started. Hello, Jay. Welcome to those joining. We'll get started in a couple minutes. Evening, Misaka and Perennial. Hello. Hello, Wasabi. Welcome. All right, let's share screen. We'll get started with our intro chanting. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Na samane na brahmane na kapandika vanibbake. Laddana samvibhajeti anang panang chabojanang tangveya vuttanika samoti ahunang purisaddamang ekachanang nadadati ekachanang pavechati tangve pade savasiti ahumedavino. Subikavacho puriso sabbabutta nukampako amodamano pakireti deta tibasati yatapi meggo tanayitva gajayitva parvasati talang ninang chapureti abhisandanto vavarina Evang eva edekacho puggolo hottitadiso Dhammena samharitvana uttanana digattakam Dhammang tapeti annapannena sammasatteva nibbake Yatapi kumbo sampunno yassa kassachi adokato Vamate uddakang nissesang natatta parigarakati. Tateva yachake disvahinang ukatta majjime dadahi danang nissesang kumbovaya adokato danang cha peya vajjancha attacharya chayayita sammanattatta chadamesu Tatta tatta yataharahang ete ko sangaha loke ratassa anivaya yato anado balado hoti vattado hoti vanado yanado sukado hoti dipado hoti chakkudo socha sabbadda bodh hoti yodadati upassayan Amatang daddo chaso hoti yodammang anusasati. All right, English. Giving. Not with recluses or Brahmins, neither with the poor and needy, does the base man share his food, or give drink with sustenance. People say that the selfish man is like a drought, a rainless sky. The one who shares his wealth with some, but does not gladly give to others, is only like a local shower. In such a way the wise describe him. The one who rains down bountiful gifts, gladly giving here and there, out of compassion for all beings, and who always says, Give, give. This type of person is like a giant cloud filled with rain, thundering and pouring down refreshing water everywhere, drenching the highlands and the lowlands too, generous without distinctions. With his wealth collected justly, won through his own efforts, he shares both food and drink with beings who are in need. Just as a pot filled with water, if overturned by anyone, pours out all its water, and does not hold any back. Even so, when you see those in need, whether low, middle, or high, then give like the overturned pot, holding nothing back. Generosity, kind words, doing a good turn for others, and treating all people alike. These bonds of sympathy are to the world what the linchpin is to the chariot wheel. Giving food, one gives strength. Giving clothes, one gives beauty. Giving transport, one gives delight. Giving lamps, one gives sight. Giving shelter, one gives all. The one who instructs in the Dhamma, the excellent teaching of the Buddha, such a person gives ambrosia. Sad. All right, friends. Hello, Karuna. Hello, Karuna. Hello, Yankee. Not next Dhammapalooza. Next Dhammapalooza will be in Colorado, but the one after that will be at Empty Cloud. I'll be back in Jersey a week from tomorrow. Actually, I'll be at Empty Cloud. But friends, it is Monday evening in the East Coast. It's Monday afternoon here in Colorado, and it is time for another Dhammapalooza, which is the Monday night festival of Dhamma with the Maggasekha community, in which we do a variety of Dhamma-related activities. We did some chanting. Maybe we'll do some meditation later on. And in between, who knows? Because Dhammapalooza is, as always, a community-guided event. In my other events, we do, there's a sutta or there's a specific topic. But Dhammapalooza, I always like to keep open because I always like to see what comes up. So if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, you can put those in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, you can put those in the chat. If you have any suttas you'd like us to read, you can put those in the chat. And if none of these arise, well, I have a sutta that we can discuss, we can read through. Louisa, I saw the note that there's a Vesak celebration, but nowhere in that email did it ever say what day the Vesak celebration is on Empty Cloud. So I have no idea when the Vesak celebration is. I'm assuming it will probably be when Bhante and I are gone and I'm there. And so Bhante Sumita will be there. So it'll probably be myself and Bhante Sumita who will be doing the Vesak. So nobody knows. All right. Yeah. Oh, so it is later in the month. Yeah. So then it'll be myself and Bhante Sumita that will be doing the Vesak. And any other monks that might be visiting. Who knows? I see a question. It's not a Dhamma question. Well, I mean, I can make it a Dhamma question. Visakha asks, is it Bhante's birthday on Thursday? Technically, if I live that long, yes. There's your Dhammification of the question. In 4 years, I will be half a century old. And just like every old person I've ever met that said, I might be 80, but my mind, I feel like I'm in my 20s. I feel that already. It's hard to think that I'm only a couple of years from half a century old. But anyway, I see we have a question here. Well, thank you, Jay, for putting the sutta reference in there. So that means we can go to the sutta. So let me load it up. Perennial Day Chief says, I'm 24, but my body feels like it's 50. I have known a few people like that, who gone through, they're young, but man, they, due to various causes and conditions and illnesses and stuff, yeah, their body is like an old person's. Yeah. 4710. All right. Yeah. Well, we're coming up on this actually, and on our Sunday evening, what you call it, Suttas Monday. We're probably a couple weeks away from this sutta. Hello, Risa. Welcome. So we're talking about the sutta called the Nuns' Quarters. Let me share screen here. Ah, hello, Julie. All right, so let's read through this and then maybe I can have some context to answer your question. Then Venerable Ananda, robed up in the morning, taking his bowl and robe, went to the nuns' quarters and sat down on the seat spread out. Then several nuns went up to Venerable Ananda, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, Honorable Ananda, several nuns meditate with their minds firmly established in the four kinds of mindfulness meditation. They have realized a higher distinction than they had before. That's how it is, sisters. That's how it is. Oh, look at this. Okay, I gotta remember this because I remember I asked Aya Tataloka, like what I should, because I with bhikkhus who are lower vasa than me, I like to use the word avuso as the Buddha suggests because it means brother, and so I kind of wanted to I was like, what kind of to bhikkhunis lower vasa than me, what kind of like almost like siblingish statement word can I use? And she said, well, some of them like Bhagini, but others don't. So here in the suttas, we have the Ananda calling them Bhaginio, sisters. All right. Any monk or nun who meditates with their mind firmly established in the four kinds of mindfulness meditation can expect to realize a higher distinction than they had before. Then Ananda educated, encouraged, fired up, and inspired those nuns with a Dhamma talk. After which he got up from his seat and left. Then Ananda wandered for alms in Savatthi. After the meal, on his return from alms food, he went to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and told him what had happened. That's so true, Ananda. That's so true. Any monk or nun who meditates with their mind firmly established in the four kinds of mindfulness meditation can expect to realize a higher distinction than they have before. I don't quite like this translation, the four kinds of mindfulness meditation. I think it can be confusing to newer Western people. It's kind of like when all these places say they teach vipassana meditation when there's really no such thing. Um, but that's just my own nitpicking. Um, okay, here we go. What for? It's when a mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of the body, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. As they meditate observing an aspect of the body based on the body, there arises physical tension or mental sluggishness, or the mind externally scattered. That mendicant should direct their mind towards an inspiring foundation. Huh, that's interesting. Karuna, I'll talk about that more after we're done with the sutta. But I can't say that I've actually. I wonder what Bhikkhu Bodhi translates that as. I mean, that inspiring foundation seems pretty straightforward. Um, it's not like it's a wrong translation, but I don't know that I understand it. That's why I'm looking. At least nothing easily comes to mind. Hello, Jose. Welcome. Okay, it's right after the body. All right. An inspiring sign. Okay. Okay. Hmm. Let's continue to read this. So this is, now that I'm understanding this, right? So you're practicing satipatthana, and then various either hindrances arise or things like physical tension, and then the Buddha is saying that you should direct your mind towards an inspiring sign, or as the, yeah, that's what Bhikkhu Bodhi says, or an inspiring foundation. So I think this is talking about a way to help you direct yourself back from being distracted by these hindrances. As they do so, joy springs up. Being joyful, rapture springs up. And when the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, one feels bliss. And when blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. Then they reflect, I have accomplished the goal for which I directed my mind. Let me now pull back. They pull back and neither place the mind nor keep it connected. They understand, I'm neither placing the mind nor keeping it connected. Mindful within myself, I am happy. So this means that they they accomplish the goal by focusing on something. Now they're bringing their awareness back to a more broad awareness, right? They're not placing the mind somewhere or trying to focus it or force it there. Furthermore, a mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of feelings, mind, principles, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. As they meditate, observing an aspect of principles, based on principles, there arises physical tension or mental sluggishness, or the mind is externally scattered. That mendicant should direct their mind towards an inspiring foundation. As they do so, joy springs up. Being joyful, rapture springs up. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, one feels bliss. When blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. Then they reflect, I have accomplished the goal for which I directed my mind. Let me now pull back. They pull back and neither place the mind. So again, this is actually Vitaka Vichara. And so we normally see these words in the jhana foundation of formulation. But now this is in the more general sense of, we are not, well, maybe actually it is the same sense. It's a good thing to contemplate for me. But the idea of placing the mind, so you're focusing, I'm going to place my mind on the breath, and then I'm going to keep it connected by going away, coming back, going away. You're keeping it connected, keeping it connected. So this is describing going from a more focused awareness or focused mindfulness to the more broad satipatthana kind of mindfulness. They pull back and neither place the mind nor keep it connected. They understand, I'm neither placing the mind nor keeping it connected. Mindful within myself, I'm happy. That's how there is directed development. Now here's the question that Jay had. Now, how is there undirected development? Not directing their mind externally, a mendicant understands my mind is not directed externally. They understand over a period of time it's unconstricted, freed, and undirected. And they also understand I meditate observing an aspect of body, keen, aware, and mindful. I am happy. So yeah, I think my first impression here when we're talking about undirected is that we are not doing vitaka vichara. We're not. This is the opposite of we're not forcing focus somewhere. Right? That doesn't mean that we can't do satipatthana, but we are not doing this technique of forcing focus in dealing with hindrances and distractions. And they understand over a period of time it's unconstricted, freed, and undirected. And they also understand I meditate observing an aspect of body, keen, aware, and mindful. I am happy. Not directing their mind externally, a mendicant understands my mind is not directed externally. And they understand. You notice here, let me just double check before I say this. You notice here the mind is not being distracted. Right? So what is before? See, as they meditate, observing an aspect of principles based on principles, there arises physical tension, mental sluggishness, or a mind is externally scattered. That paragraph is not there in the second section, right? When we're talking about undirected. Let's see if it comes up. I don't know, but we'll have to see. Did I? I have this thing with my mouse scroll that it jumps, and I lose my place with this. Okay, here we go. Um, and they understand. I meditate observing an aspect of feelings, keen, aware, and mindful. I am happy. Not directing their mind externally, a mendicant understands my mind is not directed externally. And they understand over a period of time it's unconstricted, freed, and undirected. And they also understand I meditate observing an aspect of the mind, keen, aware, and mindful. I am happy. Not directing their mind externally, a mendicant understands my mind is not directed externally. And another, when we talk about, this is almost always the case, but especially when we're talking about satipatthana, internal is of this mind and body, external is other mind and body, right? So this is also a period where the mind is not being directed externally at all. This is total internal. They also understand I meditate observing an aspect of the mind, keen, aware, and mindful. I am happy. Not directing their mind externally, a mendicant understands my mind is not directed externally. And they understand over a period of time it's unconstricted, freed, and undirected. And they also understand I meditate observing an aspect of principles, keen, aware, and mindful. I am happy. That's how there is undirected development. So, Ananda, I taught you directed development and undirected development. Out of compassion, I've done but a teacher should do who wants what's best for their disciples. Here are the roots of trees, and here are the empty huts. Practice jhana ananda. Don't be negligent. Don't regret it later. This is my instruction to you. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, Venerable Ananda was happy with what the Buddha said. All right. So Jay, I think I've covered. If you have any other clarifying questions, please do ask. We'll see if anybody else has any questions. Nope. All right. Karuna says, why did Aya say, why the bhikkhunis who don't like it? So, it's one of those things where it's a personal preference. And it's just like some people use venerable. Venerable is kind of mechanical and boring. I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. I mean, but the people who are more into the inclusiveness of gender and things like that, they want to use venerable. I think that's, I mean, if somebody wants, people to say venerable to them, I say it, but there's no heart in it. It's just so robotic. That's why I really like saying avuso. Like avuso, like, when Bante Metiko, who's now in Thailand, he's reordained in Thailand. When I message back and forth with him, I start out with avuso. Obviously, when it's a senior monk, I say Bante or Ajahn, but when it's a junior monk, I say give that kind of extra heart, especially a monk who I quite like and feel close to. And there's a few bhikkhunis that I feel like that way, Aya Chitananda and Samaneri Tavira and some, and I would like to kind of use that more sibling-like language, So that's why I asked Aya, and so it's really a personal preference thing. I think I don't remember the specifics, but there is among certain bhikkhunis a certain dislike of the word. So, and I don't remember exactly why. You have to ask bhikkhunis about that. Of Bhagini, sister. But I mean, having two real life sisters, having, grown up with two sisters, me being the oldest and, the protector and being looked up to and all that. I have a thing. I like that, having sisters. I never had any brothers, so I like having brothers too. More brothers and sisters for me. And then eventually sons and daughters of the Sakyan. All right. Perennial says, how important do you think it is for lay people to study Abhidhamma? I'm a big analytical type, but I sometimes feel if I intellectualize the Dhamma too much, it hinders me on the path. Sometimes I think of Ajahn Chah telling a foreign scholar that if there was a chicken that laid golden eggs, she's picking up its waste instead of the eggs. I think it will be useful or not useful depending on the person. I have never found it useful. When I read it years and years ago, when I haven't read the whole of the Abhidhamma, but when I started delving into it, it just wasn't for me. And then when I saw contradictions between the Abhidhamma and the suttas, that was kind of like the final clincher. I'm like, yeah, Abhidhamma is this later stuff. It might be beneficial for some people, but I don't care about it at all. And then, the people who I look up to, Bante G, Bhante Analio, they don't really talk or teach about Abhidhamma either. Although in the Buddhist world, it is more often taught than the suttas. So, like in Burma, in Sri Lanka, maybe even a little bit of Thailand, Abhidhamma is top tier because it's seen as like the highest teachings. Um, so, I don't think if you're inclined towards intellectualizing and being analytical, like you kind of list a positive and a negative to that of reading the Abhidhamma. I think the most important part when it comes to Abhidhamma is this: you should have a good foundation in the suttas, and you should also have a good practice. If you have those two, then you probably won't fall too deeply into the whole analytical, overthinking, intellectual mind aspect of the Abhidhamma. So I think the importance is based on the person's um, personality and path. That's what I'm going to say. Even though I say, I consider myself a sutta fundamentalist, um, I'm a sutta fundamentalist for myself. Not everybody is going to be inclined to the same thing. So for some people, Abhidhamma can be a good thing. Hello, Anna. That's so sweet. I miss Bante Metiko. Yeah, Bante Metiko and I are fairly close. We connected very well. Um, if he ever comes back to the States in years to come, I might try to and I'm in Colorado with starting my own monastery. I might try to see if he comes to Colorado. Yeah, don't go to New Jersey. Come to Colorado. You'll be closer to your son. But anyway, yes, yeah. So we are focusing the mind internally but undirected. So we are just having a general spread out sense of focus on the body, feeling, mind principles. Well, yes and no. From my own experience and my own practice, what I will say is that if you abide in a kind of undirected mindfulness, soon enough there will arise a feeling, sensation, emotion, whatever, that will be very, very strong in your field of awareness, that you don't even necessarily have to you don't have to necessarily intentionally focus on it. It's just so there. And so then you say, okay, this is arisen. I investigate this. That was actually my main practice for a bunch of years. In my early years, maybe like 6 or 7 years, I didn't do anapanasati because, following the breath and all that, it was just too much. It didn't work for me. Um, so I would just kind of sit there and things would arise and I would investigate it. And this was kind of me doing Satipatthana even before I really knew deeply about Satipatthana. But that was my main practice for a bunch of years. And actually, that practice is what led me to having my deeper states of samadhi as well. As the Buddha quite clearly states this, that, he quite clearly states that in the Eightfold Path, right, what comes before samadhi? Sati, right? Samasati is one of the contributing factors to Samasamadhi. In a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha says, if one wants to abandon the 5 hindrances, then one should practice Satipatthana. The way you get into jhanas is by abandoning the five hindrances. So there is this deep connection between satipatthana and samadhi. So we practice that, and then your mind becomes very calm, focused, clear, and you can have peace, tranquility, samadhi. Who's motherly love, Visakha? Did I miss something in the chat? All right. Rob says, how do you find it and choose a teacher to study under and ordain? How much weight did you put on finding a particular lineage versus a particular teacher? Those can technically be two different things. Study under and ordain, especially in Theravada, where there's not this kind of like guru or master centric thing. Like most monks in the Buddhist world don't even live with the monk that ordained them. Like in Sri Lanka, sometimes there's like mass ordinations of like 50 people. I think Bhante G told me about his ordination. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about like 1930, something like that. No, not 1930. Like 1944, something was his ordination. Because he was born in 27, no, 47, so it would have been 19. And I think he said he was ordained with like 300 other people, and it took multiple days, right? So this kind of idea of I find the one teacher and I ordain with them and I live with them forever and they teach me. That's not all that common in Theravada in general. So what I would say is you could have a like a monastic who you really like their teachings and their Dhamma talks and they're really beneficial. But on the other hand, it might not be the best place for you to ordain and be a monk. Right? There is such a thing as this, right? Because not every monk is good at everything. Not every abbot is going to be great at all aspects, right? They're going to have their strengths and weaknesses. So it's not always the same exact role. But what you would need to what I would suggest is, a particular lineage versus a particular teacher. I think the first thing really is to kind of figure out where you fit the best in terms of Buddhism. Mahayana, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Theravada, and then in Theravada, I mean, the distinctions in those three are quite vast. I don't know too much about Mahayana and Vajrayana distinctions, a little bit, broad strokes. But even in Theravada, then you're thinking, well, what country is, what country's Theravada, calls to me more? Or even kind of a lot of times it's what country's Theravada is the one that's available. So it doesn't really matter what country, you know. But it's a process, I think, of elimination. It's a process of triaging, right? You go from a lot of different possibilities to, one. And okay, I'm here. And then, like for me, that's how it worked for me when I found the suttas. First it was, I'm not Vajrayana, I'm not Mahayana, I'm Theravada. But within specifics, I'm actually more in the suttas. So I'm not even fully Theravada. So I found kind of like my focus. And then it was, well, who are the monastics that share and teach the Dhamma and I can learn more about the suttas from. And that's why I found Bhante G and Bhante Analio and Bhikkhu Bodhi and Bhante Sujato and Ajahn Brahmali and all these different monks that I look up to and kind of look at their perspective and their teaching so I understand the suttas in better ways. So it's a gradual process. When it comes to ordination, one of the best pieces of advice that I got was, and this is not always possible, right? Because especially in the West, it's not always possible to do this, but if you can, it's the best way to go about it. One of the best pieces of advice I was given was to like find a place in like a place that ordains people and go there fairly often and get to know them and see how they live and get to know the monks and have them get to know you, right? And then after a couple of years or whatever, then you can kind of see, well, is this a place I think I would like to ordain? That's how it pretty much worked with me. I found Bhavana, and even though it was a 5-hour drive, and through 4 American states, it was worth it going there. I think in the 3 years before I went to live there, I went there 14 times, 6 of which were for week-long retreats, and the others were just for long weekends, like 4-day weekends, just to go and to be with the monks and to meet other Dhamma friends and things like that. So I think that's what I would suggest, so that you don't kind of just jump into a place that might not be a good place, or it might not even be the right place for you. At least if you have, even if you do visit a place for a year or two, once you live there for a long time, you really see behind the scenes. Sometimes it's not really possible to really kind of see how good of a place it is for you just by visiting. But you have to take a leap of faith if you want, in many ways. So I guess that's as much as I can say now to that question, Rob. If you have any more specific clarifications or you want me to talk about, feel free to say in the chat. Hello, Jayantha. Welcome. Visakha is running a fever and sick. Well, you could always listen. The eyes, yeah. So Visakha is such a wonderful Deva Dutta. Everybody should look upon Visakha and learn the Dhamma from all her sicknesses and illnesses in her older age. It's very good. You're a very good teacher, Visakha. All right. Karuna is poaching something. I don't know what. Let's see. This is a good question. Are there any other monasteries like Bhantasudasa and Ayasomas? In Theravada, not that I know of, although it has been attempted before. Do you foresee other, I mean, even Bhavana Society for like almost 20 years have bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. Do you foresee other monasteries following this in years to come? Male and female monk? No, not really. And I won't be doing it either. Um, And actually, my decision on this actually comes from talking to dozens of bhikkhunis. Um, Most bhikkhunis don't want to be in a place with bhikkhus for a variety of different reasons. So, because I was like, I'm going to do it in a different way, what Bante G did, and have bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, and, and the more I talk to bhikkhunis and to more senior monastics about this in general, the way Ajahn Brahm does it is the best way, without a doubt. Um, I visited Dhammasara. I visited the Bhikkhuni monastery that everybody says is Ajahn Brahm's Bhikkhuni monastery. When you go there, it's their own thing. Like it's an hour away from Ajahn Brahm's monastery. I mean, I think they have one picture of Ajahn Brahm, but it's like they're really living their own life in their own place and doing their own thing, and they're not like uh, they're not they're not like under the yoke of Ajahn Brahm in a way, in that way, and I think they quite like it that way, to be honest with you. um so the way I kind of, right now, my ideal setup, like, 20 years from now, and I'm a senior bhikkhu, and there we have a forest monastery and all that kind of stuff, if all that comes to play, if bhikkhus and bhikkhunis were going to be on the same property, they would have to have their own kind of. So say here's the main area. Many Thai forest places I've been to, right? There's a main area, and then up in the mountains or away is where the monks go, and there's a special monk only area, right? Lay people do not go up there, right? So if I had ended up having a large enough property, maybe a couple hundred acres, which I'm told there's a bunch of in Colorado in the mountains. So, that might be a good possibility. If I have a couple hundred acres, maybe I'll have, what basically amounts to a bhikkhu monastery and a bhikkhuni monastery, separate, quite separate in the woods. So they do their own thing. And then the public facing area where we eat meals and people come to listen to Dhamma talks, yada, 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 would be then bhikkhus and bhikkhunis come together down there. Um, that would be the closest that I would do to doing something like Empty Cloud. I would not do it in the same building. Yeah, I would not do it in the same building. And this comes from, again, and trust me, I have heard dozens and dozens of stories of all the problems that Bhavana had with bhikkhus and bhikkhunis living together. Um, so it's not something that I think is wise, to be honest with you. And even Bhante G feels it was a mistake that he tried to do that. Um, so I think you can have it. You can have them be somewhat part of the same overarching community, but living close together like that. Let me tell you something about Bante Sudaso and Ayasoma, who I first knew for many years as Giovanna. There's some karmic thing going on there, right? They are, the two of them are a rare pair, right? They're very unique. And I don't know any other pair like that, that I've met, of Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni. They're just a rare pair, and Empty Cloud, I think, is going to remain a rare thing, how they do it for quite a long time to come. Hello, Ryan. Jay, assuming this is just a comment. I don't. Now before Anapanasati, I follow Brahmali's advice. I'm focusing generally on the body, relaxing it. Then, when feelings, thoughts arise, to look at them like a passenger on a bus without engaging with them. Yeah, that's good. Karuna says Santipada in New Zealand is a dual sangha. Is it? I think it turned into a bhikkhuni. I know that for a time they tried to do the dual sangha, um, but I'm not sure that it is actually dual sangha still. I could be wrong. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that that turned into a bhikkhuni monastery, like Santi. Could be wrong. Don't know, but that's my remembrance. That's what's perking up in my mind. Julie has another question. Now that you are a monk, looking back, what could you have done as a layperson to have the greatest impact in support of monks, i.e., to inform Western lay people, Buddhists, provide support, other ideas? Um, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I had deep respect and gratitude for monks, but I think that respect and gratitude grew when I became a monk, right? Because when I realized, like, when I kind of saw the other side, I was like, especially in places that are really trying to live on this just the support of lay people and trying to follow the rules as much as they can. Um, I really appreciate like support lay support of monastics now more than I did before. And I mean, I don't know that I would have done anything different than I did. I mean, like I set up a monthly payment to Bhavana and things like that. I did, what I could do in my lay life. Um, and when I visited, I killed myself in helping them, whatever. When I lived there, I killed myself in helping, doing all the things that I was doing. Um, I think I pretty much did had the best impact that I could have had. I don't see anything that I did wrong or that I could have done better per se. The thing about supporting monastics is that lay people are never really going to know how much their support actually means. Because even in places that people think are well supported, there's always a lot of lack in many different areas. There really is. I saw it basically, for a couple of years when I basically was like vice abbot of Bhavana in all but name and running the day-to-day operations of it, and places I've been to like Bodhinyana and this different things, and there's always a lack somewhere, you know. And I think that's also just part of it. Like Bhavana society has never been well off. Bhavana society, I think it's changing now because there's some like high donor, like high big time Sri Lankan support going to Bhavana as it's kind of becoming something a little different. But most of Bhavana's like, I went to, like I said, I basically ran the place for a bunch of years, and I was at every board meeting and I knew the financials and all of that stuff. Bhavana barely skated by for, it's 40 years old now. For most of its existence, it barely made it, but it made it. because it offered something great, right? It was a great place. And just anybody could just come for free and stay there and learn. And it offered um it didn't have to be well supported, right? It got by. And I'm okay with even if Maggasekha is like that, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, the thing about Westerners is they don't get how important monastics are like a person born in a Buddhist country would. That's always, it's just going to be that way unless you have a real deep gratitude and almost become more like a traditional Buddhist person in many ways. You're just not going to see the value of monastics as much. Like I said, I didn't, and I went when I became a Buddhist. I went right for the monks. Like there hasn't been a time where I didn't think the monks were the best place to learn Dhamma. Um, but I still didn't really fully understand the depths of what Dana really means until I became a monk myself. When you're really just totally living on the generosity of others. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I was gonna say next, but not everybody, even the people who do support, who really find gratitude and support, they can only do so much. They have lives, they have children, they have work, etc., and they do what they can. You can't really ask more than that from people. Um, but the more they find, the more gratitude they have, and um, the more of a priority the Dhamma becomes, the more you want the Fourfold Assembly to thrive, because without the Fourfold Assembly, there is no Buddhism, there is no Dhamma. It dies. The Fourfold Assembly is the vehicle that keeps it alive. It's one of the main reasons why I want to ordain bhikkhunis, because I want to be yet another option for women who want to ordain, right? There's not that many options. So the more options, the better, because I want the fourfold sangha, the fourfold assembly, to thrive. Um, so yeah, I guess that's good enough. By the way, Santi Monastery is probably my favorite in Australia. Just the I mean, it's the only monastery where I had to rappel down a rock face. I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is, like they have literal rock like grottos where monks go and can stay the vasa like in this rock grotto. It's just an amazing place. And Aya Karunika, who's the abbotess there, is awesome. So if you go to Australia, you definitely have to go to. And if you are on the Discord with us, Venerable Pasana also stays there um, with Aya Karunika. So that was one of my favorite places to be when I visited Australia for the month. And I stayed at what, one, two, three, four, five. I visited 7 monasteries and I stayed at 5. Santi was cool. Do you have any insights or advice for someone looking to ordain at Na Uyana? I have no idea what that is, Totem. I'm sorry. I'm assuming it's a Burmese monastery or a Burmese tradition or a Burmese thing, but I don't know. So I couldn't really help you on that one. Maybe we need monasteries that serve the needs of Western lay people, just as Asian monasteries reflect and influence local culture. What needs would that be? How would that work? Oh, it's a big monastery in Sri Lanka. Boy, I was way off then, huh? No, yes. Even in Sri Lanka, I don't know much about ordaining in Sri Lanka either. So either way, I can't help you. I'm sorry. Especially worldly lay desires for success, health, etc. I think we would need to clarify exactly. Maybe think of. There is marketing to your clientele, and there's dumbing down the Dhamma. And you don't want to do the latter, right? The former is okay. Obviously, maybe some monasteries do need to change into a more Western style. I mean, if you go to like places like a Bayagiri and, I mean, they're very Thai, but they're all, or Bhavana society. Bhavana's Bhante, people say, oh, you ordained under Bhante G, the Sri Lankan way. No, I don't. I'm here at Colorado Buddhist Vihara with Bhante Sila Ratana, and we did a puja chanting for people who brought dana. I have no idea what he was chanting. I know what I chanted at Bhavana Society, but I have no idea. Right? There's so much of Sri Lanka stuff that I have no idea. Um, but that's because Bhante G wanted to he made it one of his rules was we only teach in English, right? And so there's already there's a tradition already of adapting to the West, but you don't want to go too far. I'm sorry, I don't want to become like a Western, a Japanese reverend who's married and like the one reverend who wears high heels and does all. That's not me. I'm not. No, I want to find a way. Well, I mean, it's already been done by Giri, Bob, and at different places, but I want to continue developing, um, ordaining and having monks thrive in the West. That's what I want to continue. Um, so I would be up for some things and not up for others. It depends on what we're talking about. Gregory says, I mean, more cultural and family activities at the temple. Yeah, that can be done, but the idea, the in America, nobody does that anymore. 100 years ago, everyone went to church, just like in Sri Lanka. The local village vihara is where you find the person you're going to get married to, and you meet your relatives, once a week, and all yada yada yada, all these things. But that mechanism just doesn't exist in the West anymore. I mean, obviously, people who are still religious, Catholics and um, evangelicals out in the mountains and things like that. Yeah, they have that. Um, but for the average person, That's not something that this is why there's such an epidemic of loneliness, and why people are actually going back to church. Church attendance and all that is rising. It's because we went a time with this kind of atomization, and people are realizing, actually, you know what? I like to be in a community. So, how do we take advantage of that as a Buddhist monastery? This is something. This is a good ongoing conversation, Gregory. I think you have a point there, and I think that if it can be done in a good, skillful, beneficial way, I think that's an important thing that we do need to think about. For Maggasekha, this would be something for the city center, just like at Bodhinyana, in Asha Brahms Monastery. Most of the lay kind of activities happens at the city center. It doesn't happen at the monastery that's, an hour and a half outside of Perth. The monastery is for the monks and for the lay people who are residents, and every once in a while the people who bring dana. But the city center is for the socialization and all that kind of stuff. So I would be okay with having more of that, like at a city center, than at a monastery per se, or at least a forest monastery. Western equivalent of Songkran. I saw Songkran. It's funny because right now I'm with Bhante. I'm at the Sri Lankan, the Colorado Buddhist Vihara, but I just spent a week at the Buddha Nimit, the Thai Wat in Colorado Springs, and I got to see Songkran, and it's very similar to Vesak Katina. It's all pretty much the same thing. Although it's funny, the Thai monks, I guess, assumed because I was a Westerner, I didn't want to take part in a lot of the rituals and stuff that happens after lunch. So the one monk who speaks the most English, who I talked to, he says, "Oh, we're done." I'm like, wait a second. Usually stuff happens after lunch, but he said, no, we're done. And then all of a sudden, I'm in my room, and there's a parade, and there's chanting and singing. I'm like, they said they were done. They probably figured I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. I don't know. I would have, because I like to experience culture for the first time and things like that. But yeah, I think that would be something important, to build those kind of activities and events for people who would like to be part of Buddhist groups. Rob is saying, I appreciate this conversation. I've tried attending different temples and traditions, some of which can feel alienating, mostly due to language barrier. Yeah, well, well, it can be a hard, if you don't have a Dhamma or a Vipassana or insight place near you that kind of teaches in English, as you're trying to explore out, your only options tend to be like Sri Lankan Viharas and Thai Wats and whatever, Burmese places. Although I never had any contact. I've literally never stepped foot in a Burmese temple or monastery. I've just never had the opportunity, or it's just never happened. But because I don't think Burmese is really as populous in America as Sri Lankan and Thai. But no, this is a very common thing. Most Buddhist places, most Buddhist monks are in America because the immigrant, populations from the Buddhist countries immigrated to America, and then they brought their monks with them. and they live in little enclaves. So there's no, for the monks, there's no real pressure to learn English, and so they don't. Um, like I stayed with 6 Thai monks, and one of them speaks English pretty decent and understands. The other is okay, and then after that, it's varying degrees of they basically don't know any English, um, and that's pretty typical. That's pretty typical. Sri Lankan, Thai, doesn't matter. I guess maybe because of the English, being Sri Lanka being an English colony for so many years, I tend to find more Sri Lankan monks who know English, um, in general, but that's pretty normal. That you are, it's going to be harder for you to find people teaching Dhamma in English. It's going to be much harder for you to find Western monks. We are a rarity. There's not that many of us. Um, you know, I would say there's probably less than 50 Western monks in the whole in America. And if you're in Europe, it's way less. Um, in different places. In Australia, there's probably about that much or more. But there's not that many of us. So your options tend to be limited. You are lucky enough that you can attend Wat Metta. So, I don't know how far you have to drive, but if Wat Metta was, your best option, it probably would be worth driving a good amount of hours. Hello, Cesar. This is a very good question. I wanted to inquire about right effort. Overcoming ingrained habits is tediously and inexplicably complex. It's definitely tedious. It's not necessarily inexplicable. Habits, mental, physical habits, tendencies. The Buddha has a word for this. It's called anusaya. It means underlying tendency or underlying habitual tendency. These are things that are so ingrained, so deep, so subtle that they just happen. They just go on. Your mind just engages in these on autopilot. And so when you try to find, like when you try to investigate them, they just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and more subtle and more subtle. And then, 10 years goes by and you're still investigating it. You're still trying to get to the bottom of this, but it keeps going more subtle and more subtle and deeper and deeper and deeper. That's normal. Welcome to the practice. This is, I've been meditating for 20 years. I've been a Buddhist about 17. And there are things that I have investigated enough that I completely understand them and I've abandoned them. And there are things with it where I feel like I've made progress, but I still have a long way to go. Right? So right effort continues all the way until you become awakened. And who knows how many lifetimes that will be. Right? So right effort is something that you keep doing. You keep doing slowly but surely. You keep going. You keep practicing. There's no end until the end. So yeah, I guess that could be tedious, right? You can get exhausted. Um, but the depths of your ignorance is something that only becomes really revealed to you as you become a more advanced practitioner. You don't know just how deep your ignorance is until you can actually see the well. And then you look down and you say, oh man, I don't know about this lifetime. It might take a couple more. We'll have to see. Our ignorance is and our delusion is so deep that it takes thousands and thousands of repetitions of being mindful and investigating something for us to be able to abandon it. That's normal. That's just part of the path. So then it becomes, how do I not get disheartened? How do I not get frustrated and quit? That's probably the more important question. And that, has to be found from within in a way. If you're observing yourself and observing that you are making progress, however slow, and you become content with that, where you know what, it's going to be a slow grind, and that's okay. I'm just going to keep going. It's already has been of much benefit to my life, and if it's been so much benefit at this point, imagine what it'll be when I get to the end. So I'm going to keep going. Right? You kind of have to find the zeal, the desire, the faith, the confidence in you to keep going. But until such time, you are not awakened until you are awakened. So you will have your greed and your hatred and your delusion. You will have your unskillful bad habits. Right effort is a marathon, not a sprint. Right effort is a grind. If you thought it would suck to have a 9 to 5 retail job for the rest of your life, developing the Noble Eightfold Path is way more of a grind than that. But it's more meaningful and much better and more beneficial. So that's why people like it better. Okay, Anna, I didn't see that you had any questions. I saw you had comments, but I'll scroll up here and see what questions you have. Oh, the smoothies and shakes. Okay, I had that, but then I started talking. Um, the If you're talking about specifically for monks, it depends on what's in this. It depends on the what's in the smoothies and shakes. That's the answer. It really depends on what's allowable. If the contents are allowable, then whatever's in the smoothie and the shake is allowable. I mean, monks can have meat broth and vegetable broth if it's just the liquid. So there are allowances for various kinds of liquids. Monks can have fruit juices and things like that. So it depends on what's in it if it's breaking the fasting precept. Now, is it breaking your fast, like in terms of your metabolism and things like that? Yes, that's definitely breaking your fast. It has spinach, kale, and berries and milk. If you are putting in no, that would definitely be technically against um, the monastic rules. I know some monks who have medical conditions who have some kind of a kale smoothie at night and things like that for medically, but but typically no, that would not be considered something allowable. Jay says thanks for the new poly word. Well, Jay, I made a mind map many years ago called All the Defilements that has the Anusias in it. So let me find the link for you and I'll post it. Or you could technically just Google Maggasekha mind maps and you'll find all my mind maps. I think I have 10 maybe, something like that. all the defilements. Here we go. There's the link. And here's the my website link with all the mind maps. Oh boy, we've been going an hour and a half already. We had good questions and good discussion. That's made me think. I understand what you mean. I try to overcome the routines. You see, overcoming depends on what you mean by overcoming. If you mean by force of will, that doesn't work. The only way you overcome it is by knowing it deeply enough that you have enough wisdom and insight that you let it go. That's how you overcome in Buddhism. I try to overcome the routines I've been doing for so long through mindfulness. Perhaps I need to have compassion for myself. Yes, yeah, and metta for yourself, goodwill for yourself, for failing to achieve better discipline quickly. Yes, yes. Practice lots of metta for yourself. All right. See, we're at the end of chat. We have quite a number of people with us today, so, especially this late into Dhammapalooza. Why don't we do maybe like 10 minutes of meditation and then we'll read some Dhammapada and call it a night? So let's just meditate quietly for about 10 minutes or so. All right. Open your eyes, slowly coming out of the meditation. I see Karuna got a quick question in before we closed our eyes. Have you ever hated metta practice? Yes, only in one context. When I had to do guided meditations, um, when the words were very short and mantra-like, I did not like that. You know the story of the vision coming into my head of getting up and punching Bhante Sila in the face. You definitely have heard that one before. But and if you haven't, well, not enough time to go over it. But yeah, so this is why the metta that I teach is a bit more wordy, but it's supposed to be, because it's not meant to be like a mantra. Right? The words are really meant to kind of draw it out of you in a way. But that's the only time that I can think of hating metta practice. I love the metta practice, especially the one that I do the most. Especially like adding my own visuals and metta, blasting out of me like some anime character or something, like stuff like that. I enjoyed like playing around with the visuals and developing um, my own version of the meditation that I was taught in a way. Um, but yeah, that's the only thing that I can think of that any kind of hatred has arisen because of metta practice. All right, let's break out some Dhammapada. The monk. Good is restraint over the eye. Good is restraint over the ear. Good is restraint over the nose. Good is restraint over the tongue. Good is restraint in the body. Good is restraint in speech. Good is restraint in thought. Restraint everywhere is good. The monk restrained in every way is freed from all suffering. He who has control over his hands, feet, and tongue, who is fully controlled, delights in inward development, is absorbed in meditation, keeps to himself, and is contented. Him do people call a monk. That monk who has control over his tongue is moderate in speech, unassuming, and who explains the teaching in both letter and spirit. Whatever he says is pleasing. The monk who abides in the Dhamma, delights in the Dhamma, meditates on the Dhamma, and bears the Dhamma well in mind, he does not fall away from the sublime Dhamma. One should not despise what one has received, nor envy the gains of others. The monk who envies the gains of others does not attain to meditative absorption. A monk who does not despise what he has received, even though it be little, who is pure in livelihood and unremitting in effort, him even the gods praise. He who has no attachment whatsoever for mind and body, who does not grieve for what he has not, he is truly called a monk. The monk who abides in metta and is deeply devoted to the teaching of the Buddha attains the peace of Nibbana, the bliss of cessation of all conditioned things. Empty this boat, O monk. Emptied, it will sail lightly. Rid of lust and hatred, you shall reach Nibbana. Cut off the five, abandon the five, and cultivate the five. The monk who has overcome the five bonds is called one who has crossed the flood. Meditate, O monk, do not be heedless. Let not your mind whirl on sensual pleasures. Heedless, do not swallow a red-hot iron ball, lest you cry when burning, "Oh, this is painful." There is no meditative concentration for him who lacks insight, and no insight for him who lacks concentration. He in whom are found both meditative concentration and insight indeed is close to Nibbana. The monk who has retired to a solitary abode and calmed his mind, who comprehends the Dhamma with insight, in him there arises a delight that transcends all human delights. Whenever he sees with insight the rise and fall of the aggregates, he is full of joy and happiness. To the discerning one, this reflects the deathless. Control of the senses, contentment, restraint according to the moral monastic discipline, these form the basis of holy life here for the wise monk. Let him associate with friends who are noble, energetic, and pure in life. Let him be cordial and refined in conduct. Thus, full of joy, he will make an end of suffering. Just as the jasmine creeper sheds its withered flowers, even so, O monks, should you totally shed lust and hatred. The monk who is calm in body, calm in speech, calm in thought, well composed, and who has spewed out worldliness, he truly is called serene. By oneself, one must censure oneself and scrutinize oneself. The self-guarded and mindful monk will always live in happiness. One is one's own protector. One is one's own refuge. Therefore, one should control oneself, even as a trader controls a noble steed. Full of joy, full of faith in the teachings of the Buddha, the monk attains the peaceful state, the bliss of cessation of conditioned things. That monk who, while young, devotes himself to the teaching of the Buddha illumines the world like the moon freed from the clouds. All right, friends. Let us do our final business and then do sharing of merits. So if this is your first time joining us for Dhammapalooza, and you'd like to find out more information about myself and the organization I'm building called Maggasekha, you can go to the website listed on the screen. This is my headquarters, my home. Everything I do in terms of YouTube, in terms of retreats, in terms of articles, in terms of my travels, everything is updated and posted there. So this is the best resource for you to go to find out more information. In the top right, you can put your email in if you like, and then you can get an email notification every time I post something new. So the website is maggasekha.org, maggasekha.org. Cesar, I can talk to you more about this. Now's not the best time because we're ending. Go to the website, send an email, and we'll talk over email. So find me through my website, contact me, and we'll talk. All right. Let's share merits. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, bhaya patta chani bhaya, soka patta chani soka, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata cha mehi sampatang punya sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasatta chabumata deva naga mahitika punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. Well, that is the end of another Dhammapalooza. Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which could be tomorrow morning for a morning monastery experience, which is back at least for this week, or maybe next week for another Dhammapalooza if I'm alive then. We'll see. Have a good week.